So I was about 7 years old and I was swinging on a swing set. And if you remember being a child swinging on a swing set, you could go full force and really you'd feel like you were swinging right over the trees. So I got totally carried away, and that's what I was doing. And I fell off the swing and I hit my head. And instantly I was in a beautiful black spot that was warm, and it looked like there was a being there that looked like almost like Father Time-ish. Beautiful. He was beautiful. And he was grand and he was sitting. And there was another being next to him that was just sort of greeting me. He was quiet and he was just greeting me. And I could feel love. I could feel like everything was okay. And then to my right, there was another being. And it was an interesting layout because they were here in my immediate space. And over here to my right, in front of me, I could see that there was a city. There was a full-fledged life going on there. That was a city. And but it seemed to be removed from me. So I was in this beautiful space. And as soon as I arrived there, I felt like, oh, this is home. But I was still sort of in that 7-year-old child head because the transition was so fast that that's what I was thinking from. And so this, when I thought, oh, I'm home, I was told, no, the guy next to me said, no, you have to go back. And I said, no, this is home. And I thought to myself, it was telepathy. And he said, no, really, you want to go back. And so as I was thinking, he wants me to stay here, my mind, like when you're in the other realm, in 5D realm, you can see everything, right? So I turned my consciousness around and I looked back at the earth and I could feel all the chaos and noise of that space. And I sort of telepathically sent him the message, that place is so loud. There's so much chaos there. I don't want to go back. And he said, oh, yes, you do. And I was just shocked that he was asking me to leave this warm, beautiful place. And he said, if I explain to you why you want to go back, will you agree to go back? And I was thinking, there's no way he's going to be able to explain that, but okay. So I said yes. And he took my hand, and we sort of left that black, beautiful place with those, what I perceive is, what I was seeing is God, but he was in sort of that Father Time look about him, just to stay calm, because I was so shocked by my quick transition between being a 7-year-old little girl and entering there. And I didn't have any religious background to be formulating any kind of a Christian or whatever background to these figures. I was just there. So I think he was just making it very comfortable for my childish head to make that transition. So anyway, that my guardian, who I call my guide, took my hand and we flew up and we went into these clouds, and I could see we were above that city I had seen. And that city was all just beautiful, white, glittery. You could feel God in the air. I mean, literally, you could feel God in every single minute drop of that air. You could just feel cared for, loved. It was an ambiance in that beautiful air. And so we went up over the clouds. I could see where I lived. I remember seeing a street with houses and thinking, oh, that's where my clan lives. That's where I live. But I don't use the word clan, but that's the word that came to mind at that moment as we were flying. So we flew over, And we came down in what seemed to be a huge, huge sort of library. And my little head perceived them as drawers all the way up to eternity and down as far as you could see. We landed in this one space, and he looked at a drawer and sort of told me, open up the drawer. And so I went to open up the drawer, and it opened up, and there was a like light inside the drawer. Pardon me. There was light inside the drawer. And he told me to look in there. So I did. And all that light, as I started to concentrate, on the left-hand side of the drawer, there was swirling light. And as I concentrated, it was a story. And there was a little boy doing something. And I could see that little boy doing something. And he was really little, young. And he was going about his life. And as I watched that sort of in a 3D spectrum of him going through his life in a fast motion movie, I could see that his learning, he was learning, and then he'd fail and get it wrong, and then he'd do it again, and then he'd fail, and then he'd do it again, and he'd get it right. And then he'd move on to some new topic, and he'd do it wrong, and then he'd try it again, and maybe get it right, and then move on to another topic. But it had a rhythm to his learning that was like this, like very even keel learning over and over, a whole bunch of them. And as I was watching that little boy learn and get older, it kind of seemed boring to me. And there were too many little learning stumbling blocks, and it was sort of getting boring to watch. And as I thought that moment that I realized that's kind of boring, the light on the right-hand side of the drawer started to formulate activity, and it got my attention. So I turned and I looked in that part of the drawer. And then I saw that there was this little girl. And at first I was just watching a movie of a little girl until I realized it was me. And so I'm watching my learning, and I'm doing a sort of learning, and then I get it wrong, or I get it right, and then go on to another one. And I see that they're bigger things to tackle. And I either do it right or I do it wrong. And I go on to another one. And then later in my life, they're really big ones that I either do right or wrong. And eventually there's 3 big learning things. And so as I'm watching this life and the age of this life move on, eventually I see that I'm walking with a little girl. This is the end of the story, and it's the last sort of learning hump I'm going through. And I see this woman. She's me. I know that that's me. I'm in high heels, and I'm walking with a little girl, and I'm walking through this thing that now I think of as a tarmac, sort of to an airline. And then the little girl lets go. I let go of this little girl. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting in what I perceive as a big wall in front of me. And I'm sitting and I have my legs crossed, and I have these fancy shoes, and shoes were a big deal when I was little. And all of a sudden, while I'm sitting in what I think is a moving craft with a wall in front of it, either I'm moving really fast or the whole craft is moving. I can't tell. Whatever's happening, there's a wall in front of me. And at one point, I get thrust, full forward thrust into this wall. And as I get thrust into the wall, my whole body, I don't feel a thing. My whole body gets thrust and crushed, but my consciousness keeps moving. So eventually I'm past the wall, and I'm looking over, and my body is all crumbled. And I don't really care. I didn't feel a thing. And I realized, oh, And as I think that, oh, that's my body, I just got crumbled like a bug on a windshield, I turn and my guardian is there. And I say, is that how I die? Because now I'm living in that vision that originally I saw in a drawer, but now I've moved in to see that's the end of this story. And I turn to my guide and I say, is that how I die? And he says, yes. And I go, oh, okay. That was so weird. I didn't even feel that. And he's like, well, of course not. And at that moment, I realized, wow, on Earth, we're 3D in our body, whatever suit we're using, but we're always 5D in our soul. So whatever happens to the 3D part, we're always both. So that's why I was like, this is like sloughing off. It was like getting a haircut. It just went away. And now my 5D part of me kept moving. And it just caught me by surprise to realize we are always, all during our life, multidimensional. We just don't think of it that way, but we are. We're 3 and 5D always walking through the kitchen, right? And then, so as I realize, oh, that's how I die. And he says, yes. And and I go, then I come back here. And he says, yes. Well, at that moment, I had seen all the things I had designed for the learning of my life. Everything was clear. So at that moment, I was like, I understand why I have to come back. And so he says, that's why you want to do that. And I say, all right, I get it. And then we leave that space. He shuts the drawer. Now I'm in full understanding. I understand why I'm going to go back. But I was feeling like the life that I had lived was just really hard. It seemed so hard. I was really drained. And so we left that space and we flew up back into clouds and we landed on this beautiful landscape hill. It was just gorgeous. And all the grass, the flowers, there was consciousness. That God feeling was all around, that conscious love. There was no conflict at all. It was just home. So I land on this beautiful green hillside, and I can hear water, and I'm conscious. I can hear water, but I don't see it. And then he shows me, goes, look over there, and I see the water. And he said, put your hand in it. And so as I looked, I saw water in a little pool trickling from rocks into this little pool. And I realized there was a big body of water somewhere else that was feeding into this. But for this space that I could see, I see this beautiful body of water with conscious trees and conscious flowers and grass that was all fully alive. It fully had consciousness, every bit of it. And as I walked over, I put my hand into this water, and the water was like very bubbly and beautiful, crisp water. But when I touched it, the energy of the water came up my arm and through my entire body with like renewing white energy that was just beautiful. And it cleansed me of that crappy energy that I had left when I left Earth. It like totally cleansed me. And I realized he had done that as a favor, sort of like to give me a good head start when I got back. Like I just felt like, oh, this just healed whatever was really bothering me and made me not want to go back to Earth. That just healed it. And I realized he did me a really big favor. And so when that had happened and I stood back up, I said, I thanked him for doing that. And he said, you're welcome. And then I said, are you going to be here when I get back? And he said, yes, I'll greet you when you come back. I'll be here. And I said, okay. And I, what else? Oh, at that point, once I knew that he was going to come back, he said, because I was thinking as I'm really thinking, oh, now I know why I'm going back. So I'm just going to go refill this story. I'm just going to go finish this short little story. And he said, no, you can't go back with all that I just showed you, because it'll create conflict while you go through your life. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm not going to remember this. All right. That's okay, I guess. And at that point, I felt a tapping on my back. And I turned to look what was tapping on me. And instantly, I felt my little 7-year-old head throbbing in a huge headache. And I was like, ah. So I went to move, because I had just left spirit. So my spirit hand was beautiful and light and airy, right? But now I went to move my spirit hand, and I realized it was a 3D body hand. And I was like, oh, I'm back. And I touched my head. It hurt so much. And I realized there was a rock under my head. So I must have fallen off that swing and really landed my head really hard.